I want to ask you about the Spurs. Last night, I don't know if you guys saw, but Tim Duncan makes his NBA coaching debut on the bench. Some people were, arguing whether or not it should be Becky Hammond or not. I'll ask you how important or how much coaching is an interim coach doing as the head coach, or does Popovich still have his main stamp on that? But what did you make of Duncan making his debut? And the other question I would have for you is, we don't see a lot of great players like Duncan being head coaches around the league. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah, good question, Ceruti. So actually, coincidentally, I talked to R.C. Buford, the longtime Spurs president, who, in my opinion, is maybe the best or certainly one of the best executives in the league. Yesterday, we talked about something else. This is prior to the announcement that Popovich was not going to be coaching and that Duncan was going to be replacing him. And keep in mind, reason I bring that up, guys, is because San Antonio played at home on Tuesday night. I think they played against Indiana, and then they flew after that game to Charlotte, which is a really long flight with a time zone change. I asked R.C. Buford what time the team got to the hotel. He said he thought it was after 3 o'clock in the morning. So think of what Tim Duncan had to go through in his first game. You play back-to-back, you lose at home against a good Indiana team, then you fly on the road, and then it seemed like sometime on Wednesday, he found out that Greg Popovich was not going to be coaching. And I bring that all up, Ceruti, because he didn't have very much time to do anything. I mean, he didn't even have a lot of time to game plan, even under normal circumstances. I'm guessing they probably didn't have a shoot-around or a walkthrough. If they did, it was obviously late because you're not going to have a morning shoot-around or walkthrough the night after a home road back-to-back. Excuse me, the morning after a home road back-to-back. So, I think it was a really tough spot for Tim. I think basically you just try to think, what would Greg Popovich do? How can I hold the reins here to not, really screw anything up? We're not going to do anything different offensively. We're not going to do anything different defensively. Maybe you tweak the substitution patterns a little bit because some of that is by gut and by feel. But yeah, he had very little time to prepare for that. And I watched the end of that game. It was a close game, and luckily for Timmy and the Spurs, they got a 1-point win.
And I'll give you my opinion on why great players aren't good coaches. Or I think, and I experienced this, I was the youngest bench coach in the NBA. And there was so many steps. As being a player, I was 1 year in the media, and then I was now a bench coach on the Golden State Warriors, which I thought they were a championship level team. It's the reason why I took the job, right? And there were so many steps that I skipped by being a bench coach in the NBA. I personally feel, when I reflect back, that I was not ready for the responsibility, the film work, and everything that it goes into it, because there's institutional knowledge. When I first was starting, I probably had to spend 80 hours working on a scout. I would say by the fourth or fifth month, I was probably doing it more in 12 hours. So, and I'm sure as you get better at it as a head coach, I'm sure you can break down film in 6 hours. So you just don't have as much time. And remember, I'm only doing a scout every 7 days, 10 days. Sometimes I have them close together because it's my team. We play the Spurs twice in a week. Then I have 2 scouts. But I think that great players, it will be hard for them to take those natural steps at what it takes to be a great coach. If you let's look at Nick Nurse. He coached all over the world, and he did this job, that job. He was able to grow as a coach before he's in the spotlight, in the limelight. I don't think Nick Nurse skipped steps. Brad Stevens was the one guy. He had a chance to coach a lot in college, and now he's in the NBA, and he sort of failed his first year. But after that, he learned along the way, and he built up. There wasn't this crazy expectations. What is this guy doing? It's not all eyes on Brad Stevens. He's just like a college coach, right? I think the pressure to be a coach and then not having the institutional knowledge, I think it comes at you a million miles an hour, and it doesn't give you don't have enough institutional knowledge of a coach to be a great coach. I think it takes time, and you have to learn your style, and you have to learn how you communicate, and all that stuff. Just skipping ahead, I think that is a recipe for failure. I also think in this business, like great players that try to go into the media, they have to do a lot of the low-level work first before they can rise up and go on TV and go on here. But so many times people just put them out there, put them on TV and see how they do. And some are fine, but some fail because they didn't have the necessary steps it takes to get better at something. And I think that's where the great players sort of fail. And that's why it's cool. It's so weird to watch Tim Duncan work players out before the game. It's mind-blowing to us just to see him throwing pocket passes to Jakob Poeltl. You're like, wait a minute here. And Jakob Poeltl saying, no, I want to work on post moves. Tim Duncan's like, okay, I got you. It is so strange to find great players with that humbling experience where they will be just a low-level assistant to start out and work their way up. So that's the reason why I think it's tough for great players just to jump into a head coaching role.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think like who the greatest, who the best player was that went on to be also a great head coach. It's probably Jerry Sloan, right? I mean, obviously a great coach and was a fourth overall pick, multiple-time All-Star. But, you look at guys like Larry Bird had a little bit of success, but wasn't a long-term coach. Magic
Doug
Johnson.
Collins.
Doug Collins is another. Doug Collins good. Yeah, I mean, a good coach. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. But I mean, more recently, I mean, we saw Jason Kidd. Was obviously dabbled in head coaching. He still is an assistant now, working his way there. But you're right, he kind of got the head coaching job right before some of that low level stuff. And the other thing too is guys like you brought up Nick Nurse. Like if you look at it now, Brad Stevens, Nick Nurse, Eric Spoelstra, maybe like, if we're being honest, like definitely top 10 coaches in the league, maybe even approaching top 5. None of them had playing experience. Like Ryan, is that like when you're looking for a head coach as a front office guy, like what do you look like? Is that a big deal? And how does that gel sometimes? Do players like not accept a guy that didn't play in the league?
Yeah, I think that can be a challenge, and it depends on your organization and the support of the head coach. And I think everybody in Boston knows that Brad Stevens has Danny Ainge's support, and he has ownership support as well. And I think especially in Miami, you mentioned Eric Spoelstra's name, the issues he had when LeBron came in as a young coach, a first-time head coach. We all remember the infamous shoulder bump incident with LeBron walking off the court, whether he meant to bump Spoelstra or not, he did, and then that got blown up. And, talking to guys who were there alongside Spoelstra in that coaches meeting, they were all like, are we going to get fired? They're sitting there checking their phone and waiting to get called to Pat Riley's office. Riley basically brought him in one day, guys, and looked around the room and started laughing. Just kind of started laughing, and they say, well, this would kind of be weird if the guy's laughing, he's going to fire us. And basically, he was laughing because, hey, block out all the noise, don't worry about it. We got your back. We're going to let you guys do your jobs and coach this team. And those guys felt empowered, and the thing took off after that. After about a 500 start over the first 17 or so games, they ended up going to the NBA Finals that year and the next 3 years and winning 2 championships. So I think that organizational empowerment is so important. To your last question, Ceruti, your last point, or to Scal's point, let me put it this way. My final thing about a great player being an executive or a head coach, think of the schedule and the grind, right? For Tim Duncan, I give him a ton of credit because how much money has Tim Duncan made? I'm sure we could look it up on Basketball Reference or one of these sites, but I'm guessing he's made close to $200 million in NBA player contracts. So again, the schedule in San Antonio just this week was home game Tuesday against Indiana, fly overnight to Charlotte, game Wednesday. I'm sure they're not done for the week. I imagine they have another game or two upcoming this week. That's just this week in San Antonio. And with all the fan obligations, media obligations, interactions with ownership, individual player workouts, but then also, Ceruti, think of the off-season schedule. If you're a head coach, you're expected to be there in July and August when it's 100 degrees and humid in San Antonio. You're expected to be in the gym and be leading your organization and your program. So I haven't met a lot. There are some. Obviously, Tim Duncan is one. Jason Kidd is another of those Hall of Fame players who want to do the day-to-day grind. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty, but a select few guys want to do that. And it obviously shows you they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they love it. And I give them a ton of credit for that.
Yeah,
Tim
I'll
Duncan.
tell you guys, I was not about that. I was not about that life. It was, I could see the road, and the road was, wait a minute, I'm going to be in here, and then we're going to get fired, and I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here, and I'm never going to see my kids. And I was like, nah, man, why do that when I can do this?
So when you were done playing, Scal, like you were kind of just like, I want to be at home. I'm happy to be at home. Like I don't want to, because I think some guys miss. I think some guys like miss the travel. Some guys miss that.
No, I do too. I was going to ask Ryan that. I do miss that. I do miss being a part of the game, but it's not a hobby. Like coaching is not a hobby. It is full time. I remember I had Festus Ezeli, and this is like right in the thick of the Golden State thing, right? And I have to work out Festus Ezeli after shoot around. And I'm trying to get like 15. We got off a 7-day road trip, and we're going back onto an 8-day road trip. And I'm trying to get, I think it worked out to like 50 minutes with my kids, 50 minutes. And I really needed that 50 minutes for my wife's sake and for my sake and whatever. And I went to work out Festus Ezeli, and he was like, the shoot around was over. I was ready. And I'm looking around. I couldn't find him. And I'm like looking around, went to the weight room. He's not there. Went to the training room. He's not there. Went to the locker room, and he was getting his hair cut. And his excuse was, he wasn't even playing, by the way. Wasn't even playing. And his excuse was, come on, Scal, I got to be fresh, for the sideline. I got people coming to the game. I got to be all lined up. Like right then and there, I knew, man. I knew right then and there. I'm like, you know what? His life is not for me. It's not. I had to wait 30 minutes. I got like 5 minutes with my kid, and I've never liked Festus Ezeli since then.
Oh, man. Yeah, I guess that would be pretty annoying. By the way, Tim Duncan, to your point, McDonough, just under $246 million throughout his career. So you're right. He ain't doing this for the paycheck. I mean, this is just maybe love of the game, but it does seem like he does miss being a part of like the team kind of thing. But you're right, like from a GM perspective or a head coaching perspective, because I think that was the issue with, Phil Jackson when they gave him all this money to be the Knicks job. Is like, is he going to go to all these scouting things? Is he going to be scouting college basketball games, traveling around the country, looking at overseas prospects? Like the answer is kind of no. It's almost like he wanted to be a figurehead type president, GM guy that oversees the thing. But the great GMs and the great people around the league are the guys that are going to all these camps and watching all these players and are working their asses off, to be quite honest. And for some of the former players, it's hard to sort of have that same drive you had as a player or a coach and put it into a different role, even though it's the same kind of sport, right?
No, it is. And as Scal knows, Scal went through the coach's breakdown on the coach's life, and I thought he did a great job of that. Here's an executive's life. I was texting with Tommy Shepard, the GM of the Wizards, yesterday. I was thinking about going to Las Vegas next week for the college conference tournaments, and I decided not to go. A lot of that, honestly, is due to concerns about the coronavirus and obviously doing the show with you guys as well. But I texted with Tommy. He said, hey, I'm in a smoke-filled gym in Lithuania. And the Wizards are playing. I had a game in Sacramento last night. That's where Tommy Shepard is right now. And as Scal knows, he was around some of the best in the business, Danny Ainge, Bob Myers in Golden State. Those guys are animals. Those guys are relentless, Rudy. I mean, you could show up at a random gym literally anywhere in the world, and there's a good chance, there's Sam Presti, there's Masai Ujiri, there's wherever you think the best executives are, they're there. And so that's why on the front office side, a lot of guys on TV in particular say, I want to do the job, I want to be a president or GM. Okay, well, Tommy Shepard probably woke up at 4 a.m. to get to the airport at 5 for a 6 a.m. flight out of Vilnius or Kaunas or wherever he is in Lithuania to a connecting flight in Frankfurt or somewhere to another game the next night, and then did that about 10 days in a row and didn't see his wife and didn't see his kids, inhaled a lot of secondhand smoke, ate bad food, probably didn't sleep a lot, and then may or may not have found anything useful that helped the Washington Wizards in the draft. That's the life, and that's the job. Scal told you about the grind on the coaching side. Ceruti, there were days when I came home and I was worn out. My wife said, are you okay? I said, well, honey, I was at the office for 12 hours today. I didn't watch 1 minute of basketball. Not one. That's what I enjoy. That's what I feel like my strength is, player evaluation. She said, well, why not? Well, I was dealing with ownership. I was dealing with the business side. I was dealing with the media or the fans, right? I had to watch a bunch of film or make calls, or the NBA wanted these memos. And I could go on and on, Ceruti. I don't want our listeners to tune out, but that's the job. That's the life. It's not just the 2.5 hours you see when the ball goes up in the air for game time. It's all the other stuff, and it's year-round. The last point I'll leave you guys with on this, and Lon Babby, my former colleague with the Suns, who was on the player agent side, who represented Tim Duncan and Grant Hill and Ray Allen, some great players, had a line that's always stuck with me. He said, when you're a coach or you're in the front office, every day is Wednesday. And I thought that was so point. Every day is Wednesday. It's the same. It's Groundhog Day. You wake up. It's like not like the weekend just happened, but it's also not like the weekend's very close either. You're kind of stuck in the middle of the week. That Wednesday feeling. I think that might actually be one of 5 Hour Energy, who's one of our sponsors, deals. That Wednesday feeling. It's hump day, man. The weekend's seems long gone, but the next one's ahead. Here we go again. Let's do it again. And then even on your when it's Friday or Saturday, you're on your couch. Ceruti's drinking bourbon with his wife. You never know when that phone's going to ring, and there's going to be another crisis that's going to happen. We're going to go have to put out some other damn fire that you hadn't even thought of till 5 seconds ago.
I guarantee you, no GM has ever had brunch. I guarantee you.
What about the off season? Come on.
You're going to drive through McDonald's. It's such a life. Like, if you really think about life and if you really want to live a long time, like if you're like, these are the things you got to do to live a long time. You got to exercise. You got to eat right. You got to get your sleep. You got to live a low stress life. Like, every top 10 things to live a long time would be the top 10 things you have to do to be a GM or a coach.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
And that's funny too, to your point. Like, I'm sure Tommy Shepard, Ron, comes home and now there's articles in the Washington Post or wherever written about like, hey, are they doing enough to put, to give Brad Beal help? And he's like, listen, I'm doing my best here. I just got here, and all of a sudden I'm still not doing a good enough job. And you're never really getting praised, especially in that situation, even though a lot of those guys are putting in that ridiculous amount of work. So that's a really great insight there.